Hey guys, Hades here. All right, I have quite a long PowerPoint on figurative language where we discuss a lot of it. Again will break this up into probably three parts. So we'll just do the first part today, and then we'll continue on with the other parts. What is figurative language? What is literal language? What is rhetoric? And what is a rhetorical question? And that little cartoon there on the right. Once again, Ken fails to consider the weight of his words. Right? So they're acting as though the weight of his words means it has literal weight to it, and it crushed the table, which of course isn't true, right? That's why we have figurative language. It's not meant to be taken literally. Literal language is maybe normal language, where the words maintain a consistent meaning regardless of the context. Literal or dictionary definition words do not deviate from their defined meaning, right? So they've taken this, in this picture, they've taken the phrase baby on board and they tried to make it literal. They took a board and they put a baby on it, baby on board. All right, get it? It's meant to be a joke. It's taking a figurative expression and making it literal. So literal words do not change their meaning. You always know what they mean. And you, as an English language learner or any language learner, are learning a lot more literal words, and some figurative or idiomatic phrases might confuse you if you don't know what they mean, because you can't know what they mean by looking them up in the dictionary because they're figurative. Figurative language is the use of words that tends to alter or exaggerate the real meaning of the word. These are usually used in circumstances where the literal meaning makes no sense. So if you look at that picture on the right, we have a phrase called "cat's got your tongue." That means basically not literally a cat grabbing your tongue. It means someone is being quiet. Often we say this as a question. Why are you being so quiet? Cat's got your tongue? It means you're just pointing out that someone is being quiet, not talking. But if you didn't know that, you would have no idea what it meant when someone said that. Rhetoric is the use of language to make a strong point or convince someone of an opinion. It can, but usually doesn't, employ figurative language and is always an attempt to convince someone of a point of view. Right? So literal, he is brave. Figurative, metaphor, he is a tiger. Rhetoric, he is so brave, the bravest man I met. He will never behave cowardly nor run away from a fight. So rhetoric is just an argument, and it doesn't always have to be figurative, but there's a reason I brought up rhetoric for this. Rhetorical questions can be figurative because they're not being used, they're not using their literal meaning, right? Rhetorical questions are those asked when someone is trying to prove a point and usually does not want or require an answer. The question is used more to prove a point than to elicit an answer. So a rhetorical question is part of your rhetoric, part of your argument. You're asking this question not because you want an answer, but because it's part of your argument. So the example they give over here on the right, you come home, let's say you're a teenager and you come home late, right? And your parents are angry. Your dad might say, "Do you know what time it is?" He is not asking you to tell him, yeah, it's midnight. He's not asking you to tell him the time. He's using this as a rhetorical question, as part of his rhetoric. He's angry that you're home late. So he's saying, "Do you know what time it is?" He's not expecting an answer. Or someone might say, "Are you for real?" That means they find it hard to believe what you're saying, right? They know you're literally a real human, but it's part of their rhetoric, right? It's a rhetorical question. So rhetorical questions are not meant to be answered. They are simply part of someone's rhetoric, of what point they're trying to make. They're using a question to ask it. So while rhetoric itself is not always figurative, rhetorical questions usually are. All right, what is a simile? What is a metaphor? What is an extended metaphor? And what is an analogy? An analogy is a comparison between like things, even if those two things don't have many things in common, such as a heart or a pump. An analogy is a similarity or comparability. So we might compare a heart to a pump because they both move liquid through a system, right? A pump moves water through a building, and your heart moves blood through your body. So analogies, we're taking something that maybe is different, but they have at least one thing in common. And honestly, I don't like these analogies on the right. They're a little difficult. Maybe I should have picked better analogies on the right. But basically, similes and metaphors that we're going to talk about in a minute are analogies. So we'll look at a couple of these analogies. In is to out, as up is to down. Go is to green, as red is to stop. If you'd like, you could pause this and look at the rest of them. It's, I don't know, I could have picked simpler analogies, to be honest with you. But an analogy is comparing two things that are different, but they have something in common. Similes compare two things using a connective, usually like or as. Here's an example. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. That's actually from a Christmas poem. What does that mean? Why would you say that? His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. Basically, it means when fairer people's skin is cold, sometimes it'll turn red, right? So he's saying this is about Santa Claus, actually, saying he was out in the cold. And this was pretty simple, right? This simile, she moves like a snail. What does that mean, to move like a snail? Does that mean that she slides along the ground and she's slimy? No, it means she moves slowly, right? She moves like a snail. She moves slowly. I like Guns N' Roses, so let's throw some a simile in there from Guns N' Roses. Loaded like a freight train, flying like an aeroplane, feeling like a space brain. One more time tonight. All right, what does that mean? What does it mean to be loaded like a freight train, flying like an airplane, feeling like a space brain? I'll tell you real quickly. Basically, they mean high or drunk, right? Some sort of chemical euphoria is what they mean here. Metaphors compare unlike things shown to have a similarity without using like or as, right? So look on the right here. You're a weasel. That's a metaphor. Well, I'm like one. I'm like a weasel. That's a simile. So they're very similar, except similes will use like or as, metaphors do not, right? So instead of saying he is like a rock, say he is a rock. And by the way, if we call someone a rock, what does that mean? If we call someone a rock, it could mean a couple things. Sometimes if someone's very isolated, a loner, not huge socially, we might say they're a rock, right? Or someone's very strong, right? We also might say he's a rock. And we've already talked about this one. She is a snail. Instead of she is like a snail or she moves like a snail, she is a snail. Usually that means slow, because those creatures move quite slowly. They are all dogs. What does that mean? Dogs has multiple meanings in English. I just did not a live class, but when I was camping, I did a video on this, and that'll be out soon, maybe even before this, I'm not sure, where I talk about different definitions of dogs. So actually, why don't you watch that? Except there's one I forgot in there. Sometimes when you call a man a dog, it means he gets together with lots of women, right? Like a male dog doesn't stay with one female dog. He runs around rutting lots of different females. So sometimes when you call a man a dog, that's what it means. But there's other definitions. Check out that other video. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. That's a metaphor from Shakespeare. And I've also recently been doing some Shakespeare ones. So Juliet is not literally the sun, right? He's comparing Juliet to the sun. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. But anyhow, here, the metaphor, right? Life's but a walking shadow. Life is a shadow. Life is a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage. That's a metaphor, right? It's life is not literally that, so it's a metaphor. It's figurative language. And I talk more about that quote in my Shakespeare ones. An extended metaphor is continued over multiple sentences. Sometimes an extended metaphor could go for several pages or be the concept of a whole poem or story. Like this one over here on the right, entitled Gone. I'll go ahead and read it out. Trust is a shiny crystal sheet of glass, not something to take advantage of. It's not a little girl's pigtailed doll that when her brother tears its head off can easily be replaced. When you break someone's trust, you almost never get it back. It disappears down a road of no return. It is limited within a person, and it's something that isn't missed until it's cracked, shattered, gone. So that writing, the whole thing is comparing trust to a shiny crystal sheet of glass, right? And they're explaining why it's like that, what happens when you break it, right? So that's an extended metaphor, a metaphor that goes on for a period of time. Okay, we're about done, but I wanted to show you some of what we'll be talking about in the next lesson, right? So what other forms of figurative language do you know? What is slang? What is an idiom? I don't know. You can leave it in the comments or just wait for a few more days when part B will be out. Yeah? Okay, guys, if you have any questions, put them in the comments or anything to say. This is a horrible video or this is great. Whatever you want. Okay, that's about it then. I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.